Hello YouTube, it's Eternal Frost here, coming at you with another video of Warhammer Inquisition-Martyr. Martyr? I'll get the pronunciation right eventually. Anyway, I had some requests for more videos of this game, so here we go. I wanted to show something a little bit different. I've got a few classes that I'm running with right now. You can see them here. Here's my Tactical Crusader, who I ran last time through some of the story missions. I do have an Assault Crusader. This is more your traditional Crusader type that, you know, has your suppression shield you can see here, as well as a close combat weapon, melee based. But like I said in my previous video, you can really kind of kit them out how you want. And of course, here's my Psyker. So he's an Empyreanist. I honestly am not sure really what the differences are between the three different classes for Psyker. They each will unlock the same psychic powers. It's just a matter of when, really, what levels they unlock. So, yeah, I'm not sure if there are other differences, but that's what it seems to be, at least according to the alpha. Anyway, let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to show you what the hub looks like, and you'll also kind of run through how the Psyker powers differ in this game as opposed to some other action RPGs. As you know, in most action RPGs, you have your ranged classes, you have your melee classes, and here you have, and then you have your sorcerer or wizard classes, right? Here, this would be your wizard class. Now, Psykers are interesting in the Warhammer 40k because they have connections to something called the warp, which is basically where demons and everything come from. And it's an interesting mechanic here in that as you use your powers, you build this thing called warp heat. And as this warp heat increases, basically the demons of chaos start coming after you. So you get these weird things like random explosions, pretty lights, things that are trying to kill you, and eventually, once you've hit maximum warp heat, demons do start spilling out into the real world to go and eat your face off. So management of warp heat is pretty necessary as a Psyker. Your weapons, which you get some close combat ones. Here I'm using a staff, which is a ranged weapon. Here it's the rare force staff, or rather a force staff, which gives you basically a kinetic blast. And then I have another staff, pyrokinetic staff, which gives you like an explosive type of ability. The weapons, whether they're close combat or rods, which are basically like one-handed version of staves, can be combined. So you can have like a rod in one hand, a pistol in the other, or you could have a force sword in one hand and then again a pistol or rod in the other hand. So you can combine them as you will, right? Like with many of the other weapons in this game. You just can't dual wield melee weapons as far as I can tell. And just as with the pistols, your skills are going to be based on your weapon reloadout. You'll notice here in this set that I actually have what appears to be one skill followed by 3 books, right? And then if you look at my focus, which is my grenade slot, it's not a grenade, it's another book. And if you look at my armor, the Warbound armor, that doesn't have a skill in it, that's another book. Those books are your spell slots. So what I've done is basically I've substituted my grenade slot for a spell slot, and I've substituted my super ability, I'm not sure what you want to call it, the number 4 ability, with another spell slot. And so you do have a choice as to what to put in those slots after you've completed the tutorial. And in the hub here, you'll see that there's this book here called Psychic Powers, and that's basically where you're going to assign your spells, right? So here, check out these Psychic Powers. You have several different schools. You got 4 schools of Psychic Powers, you know, Biomancy, Pyromancy, Divination, and Telekinesis. And for those of you familiar with role-playing games, these are pretty self-explanatory, right? Biomancy are basically powers of the body. Pyromancy are fire. Divination would be things like, well, look here, precognition. So divining things, right? Prediction, that sort of thing. And telekinesis, the manipulation of force, right? As you can see here that I haven't been able to unlock all these yet. I'm only level 8. But you can see here that we've got each of these different spells, right? So at the top here, you have your weapon sets. You can see my force staff and pyrokinetic staff, and you can assign in each of these slots a different power. So for example, this first power is going to be Crush, which is a telekinetic ability. I've got some Bio Lightning, Misfortune, which is a Divination, Telekine Dome, which is a protective spell, and then Levitation, which is kind of like travel slash protection spell, right? And then if I were to switch weapons, I have a different spell loadout. Here, Molten Beam, Inferno, Fiery Form, again, Misfortune, and then Telekine Dome. So you'll also notice below that there's these little squares with locks on them. These locks are unlocked at higher ranks. You can see 10 and 20, and you can populate them with different skills, basically. So if you look in the skill tree, you'll see that you can unlock under the Psychic debuffs and Psychic Combat, unlike the other skills where you can say, for range combat, for example, you can increase your range damage or your critical hit percentage, things that will pertain to combat or weapon use, or, hit points. You can increase your hit point pools, or you can increase your suppression. With the Psychic Combat and the Psychic debuffs, you're adding these little Psychic masteries, right? So here I've got Exploit Weakness, Dismantle, Demolition, and all these little things basically can modify each of your spells, right? So it gets pretty granular here. So for example, Bio Lightning, if you were to take this first one, you see that I've got the increased skill effectiveness enhance effect. And if you actually go click on Bio Lightning, you can see that here are all the masteries, right? So this is for each of these spells. So you have 24 different spells, and each of these 24 spells has up to 3 different masteries that you can add. And of those, there are 5, 6, 7, 28, 27 different masteries. So that's a lot of variability. You can have the same mastery across your spells here. Like I've got increased duration on a lot of my buffs. So, well, obviously to increase duration. And some of these things have increased damage, and increased skill effectiveness basically increases, well, I'm not sure what it does. I guess it increases whatever it does, right? But it doesn't really change anything that I see. Like it might change the damage or the DPS in this case. You can do things like reduce the cost of it, reduce the cooldown, extend duration, make it have a bigger area of effect. I mean, there are so many ways to kind of cut it up. It makes the Psyker really, really interesting in its deployment. And you can kind of see in the bottom right how this kind of pans out on your weapon slots. You'll notice that my grenade slot is a spell slot, and my super skill slot, whatever you want to call it, is another spell. Now this bar is the warp heat. So whereas as the Crusader this was the focus, or on the Assassin this is the adrenaline, building this bar is a bad thing, unlike the other two classes, where you want it to be full so that you can spend it on things. In this case, if it's full, you can end up hurting yourself. Now, there are certain perks where you can actually benefit from a full warp heat bar, so it's not so bad. And that's another thing you got to figure into your skills, too, in your spell selections, as well as your masteries, is that if you go into your character's perks, here I have warp heat dissipation, so every kill I can reduce my warp heat. You can find some of these perks, like this one, and I'm thinking about using this, not warp resonance, this one? Warp attunement, you get an increased chance for beneficial warp anomalies. So if your warp heat's high enough to start creating anomalies, sometimes you'll get these ones that instead of exploding in your face or summoning demons, they can heal you or grant you, restore your suppression, things like that. So, yeah, and again, looking at these perks, some of these things can increase your amount of damage per warp heat. This one seems to be really nice. Lets your psychic powers that buff you last twice as long. So I can use that instead of wasting a mastery slot on increased duration. And it's also twice as effective as increased duration. So there are multiple things to consider. These perks, by the way, are across all characters, as in like you will have the ability to assign 3 perks to each character. I think I kind of described that in my prior video. If I didn't, my apologies. But these are unlocked by doing certain things, such as burning enough critters, or blowing up enough barrels, etc. And then you can assign them per your level, right, or your rank, as it were. So as you can see here, it's quite detailed, these character sheets. So there's a lot of depth here, and a lot of customization, and it gets more so in the case of the Psyker. So that's something to consider. Give me 1 second. Of course I got something in my eye. Whoops. Alright, so what we're going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and play a mission. I'm going to actually play a story mission, but it's not the main story. It's an side quest you kind of got going on here, not an optional one, but an actual unique one. So, haven't played this one before. Should be okay. My power rank is 228. Again, that is like a singular number to kind of tell you how powerful you are, and it's pretty much matched up with the level. Now, one thing I noticed before was I had apparently selected story mode because I thought that was like the normal mode, but apparently story mode just reduces the amount of damage that you get ridiculously. So in my prior video, if you notice, when I was playing my tactical guy, I was taking no damage at all. So in this case, I've restored it to the appropriate challenge mode, and I said that with quotes because it's not challenging at all, on normal at least. But you can see here you can actually increase the difficulty. So if you feel like you want to, go ahead, swap it up from normal, and have at it. So, anyway, here we go. Let's do a drop. So, background in the story, basically, it turns out that there's, in this underhive, there's been some strange going-ons with some word bearers that have been making sacrifices to a Xenos artifact, a Xenos monolith, actually. So I'm kind of going in there after I found the leader to basically clean house. So you'll notice that... Wait for him to finish. This character...
I don't intend to let any heretic Astartes leave this place.
This character is a lot more fragile than the tactical marine, so he plays quite differently. But lots of damage, of course, as you would expect.
Off with you!
This is going to be interesting. 3 hits. So you'll see me running away a lot and potentially dying, so that'll be fun. You'll see I'm switching off between my primary attack because I know it takes 2 hits to kill it, and I'm using this force bolt on my right click between shots, except that force bolt does take warp heat, whereas the primary attack reduces warp heat. So by switching back and forth, I can basically keep up a constant barrage. This skill that I'm using here does do knockdown and knockback, so I can kind of chain this with the force bolt and just kind of keep a single target locked down. So this, my force staff is basically really good at killing bosses because I can just keep them knocked down forever. And you'll see I use the reduced cooldown so I can spam it again against those bosses. That skill I used right there is my number 2 skill. It reduces the armor of my target. So Space Marines, who have great amounts of armor, are dropped in armor class, which is very helpful in trying to kill them. The duration on those buffs is not very long, and they have a high cooldown, so it really punishes you for using them, for spamming them, really. You'll notice that the tactical view that I've enabled, I've set it so that it highlights everyone, so it makes it a little bit easier to see. I've found that, especially with all the particle effects and graphics in the game, sometimes it's hard to pick out your targets, especially when there's a lot of them like that. I'm going to actually switch to my pyrokinetic staff, because that has an area of effect here. You'll see it's got a laser like the last pistol and the last gun. One thing to note about this laser that I fire, though, it doesn't pierce like the last gun and the last pistols. So it's, while it's good for single targets, anything beyond that, no dice. It's pouring a lot of plasma into me. I'm taking cover here because, again, I'm fragile, so...
Who are you to stand against me? So be it.
A lot of warp heat. Oops. a lot of the skills I just used there actually increase the amount of damage I do. And there's that little column of fire that I could use to bother things as they chase me. So I increase the duration on that thing, so it hangs around for a bit, because it does take time for it to kill something. It'll eventually dissipate. Yeah, you're going to see me run a lot. That, I am not a fan of those sentinels. They take quite a bit of time to kill. And time is not something the Psyker is good at having. So I want to whittle down his adds. Oh, we got 2 bosses in there too. This dome I'm summoning decreases the amount of range damage. There's that purple thing's a warp anomaly that can appear even if you're not at full warp heat. Yellow heat, it'll pop up. So that will do AoE damage to you if it gets on you, just like my fire thing does. You're gonna try to chain a knockdown on this guy once he gets into yellow. There you go. Still hurt in the face though. Alright, what are we gonna do about the sentinel? Is he... What's a chest by him? He's got some...
Die, heretic!
Looks like the missiles he's firing are, whoops, that's not what I want to do. There you go, single target. I don't think he can knock this guy down. Get behind this. Yeah, it says knockdown resisted, but that might just be because of his suppression. My com's gonna break soon. I'm gonna be very sad. Oh, there you go, I can stagger him.
Fight fire!
Nice, that
with
stagger.
fire.
Alright, so this is a possessed chest. You can kind of tell by the nerdly green glow. It's going to summon a demon as soon as I open it, so... Pop a bubble, summon the demon, then lock him down. There you go. Now he's just locked down.
Another demon banished. Time to reap the reward.
Lots of crafting stuff.
Perish, filth!
Bullet disappeared in midair. Did you see that? Must be my psychic might.
Death is a journey.
It says burn damage, right? No, it doesn't. Interesting. Oh, so you'll see here under my fiery form, which does that little fire circle around me, it increases the amount of damage I do, especially heat attacks. And since this is my pyro staff, everything's heat, right? So, heat, you'll see the little red under to the right of the DPS. Everything's heat. So, using that fire form increases all my damage, basically. I don't think it increases this damage, but it does increase it a little bit. See, like 20% to other attacks. So even the Inferno gets increased damage. Combined with the armor piercing, this makes this a great panic build, I think.
You are guilty!
Let's get a little bit of everything. Single target attacks, AoE. Here. Drop that on his face real quick. Turn through that armor. At the cost of a little bit of my soul, you know, it can't hurt. If you hold shift to stand still, by the way, you can drop those explosions behind cover. It's also really good at blowing up barrels. Let's see from here I can... That's good.
I wonder if this has something to do with those traitors down here. Recoil, unclean.
Pick up those creds. The longer you hold that beam, the more damage it does. I mean, like, it stacks damage up to a plus 120% if you hold it for 3 seconds or longer. So, it is definitely. Oh crap!
Not a boring day at all.
Yep, I see him behind me.
For the Emperor.
Increased damage does a good job at taking care of everything around me with this thing.
Suffer my pain.
Silence that gun. Forgot about my shield there. Probably should have enacted that earlier. The other thing about this fire staff is, even though it seems like it fires slower, so those primary attacks, like I mentioned earlier, will reduce your warp heat. And likewise, if you're using like your force sword, its primary attack is a melee attack, that sort of deal, or one of the force rods also has their own kind of primary attack. Each of those primary attacks reduce force heat. You'll see they have those blue icons. That's annoying.
To stand against me.
And while it doesn't hit as fast as the kinetic blast that the other rod does,
For the Emperor.
because you hit multiple targets typically with one of those bursts, it does reduce your force heat really quick. It does appear, and maybe I'm wrong here, but it appears, like that your force heat is reduced per hit. So if I hit a group of enemies, like 5 of them, it's reduced by 5 times whatever. So,
Sorcerer,
oh, those
your
are,
machinations end today.
that's bold news.
You will not stop the ritual. The warp will bring the fires of destruction and show you the power of the true.
I ever feel like dying? I'm gonna die.
No mercy for the heretic. No forgiveness.
Those sorcerers are nasty in this game. Oh boy. Let's go and drop him as fast as we can.
Recoil, unclean.
Nice. Drop your lackey as fast as we can. Alright, those are the hard ones. That wasn't as bad as I was expecting. Well, I'm half dead.
I slay in thy name.
That damage buff back. There you go. That's what it's for. Wow, that wasn't as bad as I was expecting. Look, a buff. That healed me, I think.
Witness
for you.
my power.
Get that crate. I do believe one of my buddies said that those crates, like, you break 250 of them, you get a perk. I don't know what that perk is, but whatever. I'll blow up as many of those barrels as I can. So we're gonna clean house here. Make sure we grab all the chests if there are any missing. Or I mean, missing 30 there.
Witness my
They're not
power.
always marked on the map, so I haven't determined how or what
Die, heretic.
makes them appear on the map versus not. So there's a chest. That one is on the map. So it's probably whatchamacallit? Yeah. Crafting materials. Couldn't think of the word. We're done with this level? Looks like we're done. So Marvel and behold, the greatness of the dark gods is limitless. The Xenos monoliths are functioning as planned. Their creators might have spread through the whole sector once, but they are dust now, and their alien work will serve the grandeur of chaos. When presented with the offerings of defiance and denial recited in litanies of truth ascended, the monoliths started to awoken, whoops. Stirring the winds of the Immaterium. This is kind of hard to read. The constellation of delusion will be shortly upon us. Until then, we must continue the soul sacraments, according to the Malefica. According to the I'm not sure what. The warp surges could, I'm bad at reading, rage for centuries to come if the conjurations are strong enough. If our brothers can wake the other monoliths in the sector, we can engulf all of the category in the fires of the warp. We will liberate the sector from the shackles of their corpse god. No, Emperor, why?
Fear has no dominion. The traitors will perish today.
Yup. There you go. This is just a quick glimpse into Psyker abilities and Psyker powers in the world of Warhammer 40k. You got to see a little bit of how the warp interacts with you and how that warp management kind of adds a little unique flair to casting and sorceries as opposed to other RPGs where, you know, you just have straight out magic points or mana or something. This one, you get heat, and not only do you get heat, but you also have to watch out for the demons of the warp coming for you. I didn't get to summon anything neat here because I'm not stupid and I didn't want to die. So, yeah, there it is. This is Eternal Frost signing out. If you have any ideas or comments, please leave them below. Let me know what you guys want to see. Leave a like. Don't forget to subscribe. Eternal Frost signing out.